Hi everyone, this is a market recap for Monday, August 24th, 2026. The market continues to unwind. The Qs have pretty much just filled in this gap off the follow through day. Lows of the follow through day were in fact broken, which is, never generally a good sign. However, I'm still not particularly bearish for the market right now. I frankly think we could even have bottomed right here, for now and chop around more and begin possibly another short-term trend higher. If we look at the SPY, similar idea, right? Just kind of pulling back, sort of a double bottom off the 19th lows, but we'll see kind of what happens. Not too opinionated one way or another on the indices. Right now, it's pretty clear though that money is flowing into certain sectors, and as long as you're trading those sectors, then all should be well. And we have seen quite the rotation recently, and I think that's the big takeaway. Is although the indices are doing not doing too hot, we've seen money flow into a bunch of different things pretty rapidly. Being crypto. If we look at gold futures, right, gold and NEM and AEM, and then crypto like a Bitcoin or an Ethereum, so similar ideas there. But this is where money has been going. Also, biotechs and healthcare have been pretty good. If we look at the XBI, kind of pulled back, filled this gap here just about. We'll see if we have put in lows and continue higher. But yeah, we've seen also rotation into uranium stocks. If you look at like a UROY, um, if I can type this properly, kind of a lot of these uranium names kind of flagged and then broke out on Friday. A bit of a washout today. I considered actually buying this washout kind of off lows, but decided not to. Not, something that I'm dying to be involved in quite yet. If we look at a CCJ, right, these things could, even if they go higher, we could just let them build out a base, and I'm sure there'll be time to get involved if they do decide to start going now. And it's been kind of the story with a lot of these commodity or resource type trades is we're getting these very low flags, right? That's kind of what we've seen in like an NEM. This really was actually kind of the leader in gold space, so this wasn't particularly low flag, although it's not really a flag that's easy to get involved in. But a Barrick, right? Kind of a low flag here. Oops. And you got this breakout right over the 200, and then off to the races. Same deal with silver. And then if you look at like an Ethereum or an IBIT, you had this very low flag that, right off the lows, straight back over the 200. And these have just been the themes that we've been seeing the last few days, the last few weeks. Um, and it's good to see this type of price action. I don't think we've seen this type of price action in any sector for an extended period of time. And it's made finally getting some traction, at least on one or two things within my portfolio, right? I'm in an ETHU. This thing is up. I bought it on this day here. It's up, 74% since my entry. Restaurants had a nice day today and Friday. Um, if we look at a Brinker International, a Cheesecake Factory, right? They kind of bounced off their moving averages fairly nicely. And I'm still in Brinker International. I've been in this thing forever. Awesome to see this have nice continuation. It would be great if we could kind of get a push up to 300, although that's certainly asking for a lot. Healthcare, like I briefly mentioned, I'm in Lilly since the 14th. Tried to break out, been kind of flagging, going consolidating fairly nicely, honestly. But I'm ready for us to get going. We really shouldn't make new lows beyond this. It's time for this thing to, gap up overnight and then be off to the races. That's my opinion, at least. And, similar idea with an mRNA, right? These things are all kind of trading in relatively a synchronized manner. And that's pretty typical after you get a pretty explosive move. I'm personally watching a stock like GH. I think this looks really, really good for the healthcare sector. I'd like to see, a pullback into like 160 pretty much. And if we can pull back into 160, I would definitely like to buy it and then potentially add over this pivot. Semis and memory names continue, to kind of drag the market lower, which is kind of the story we've been seeing. SMH continue to make new lows. If we look at a SanDisk, which looked like it maybe was gonna trend higher and build out a flag over the 50-day, is now a completely broken structure. Same with a lot of these memory names. Same with the photonics names. Same with like all of the semiconductors. If we look at like an AVGO or an AEHR, right? These were the ones that kind of broke out first and they've completely reversed their moves. So it's pretty clear to me that, money is just not flowing into these stocks. I certainly want to be tracking them though. Marvell is a nice relative strength in the stock in the semi space. I personally think today could have actually been a reasonable entry had earnings not been in 3 days. But usually, you kind of get these initial beginning trend moves. You get pullbacks consistently into their moving averages. They trade fairly symmetrical across pullbacks, and you can get, a push up to highs pretty quick. Or, relative highs, not these highs, but like these highs. So Marvell looks pretty good. An MU kind of lost its point of control, or in my opinion, which would be the 50-day, and it's broken structure. Again, I'm not convinced we're going to continue much lower on these stocks. I just think they just need to build sideways. That's pretty much what it comes down to. There's actually several stocks that are kind of on my watch list right now. I think a few in the software space look really good. I think Frog looks good. If you're watching this off the 50, I think that's a good trade. But, I think if anything, maybe we go like this and then, contract one more time before we kind of go higher. That would be pretty optimal, in my opinion. I would really like to get involved in a stock like JFrog. Chime looks really good. This, if we get a pullback into the 10-day or kind of let the 10-day catch up a little bit more, I would definitely like to be a buyer. Otherwise, kind of over this level looks pretty good, although I wouldn't be a buyer of it quite yet. Toast, again, I actually didn't buy this on the 21st, although I mentioned it and that I was on my watch list. I just didn't feel super comfortable. Like I didn't really see a super clean spot to get involved. But if you would have bought it over, the 20th highs, that was certainly a good place. SoFi is building out a pretty low base here, still under the 200-day. This is not a stock I'd want to buy into strength. This is definitely a stock I'd want to buy into weakness, especially when you have the 200-day, right? If you can be involved on weakness in a base like this, and then it pushes into the 200, you can trim. And if it reverses well, then you've still made money on the trade. And Oscar looks really good. A bit of a fail, day to day, but nothing to really be too concerned about. I still think, if we can, pull back one more time kind of into this level right here to the $31.20 EMA level, I wouldn't mind getting involved. I think Oscar looks really good. I think a Dynatrace looks pretty good over this level here. Not quite as clean of a setup, although I do think it looks pretty solid. And then I already mentioned GH. And then this is an interesting one that I'm certainly not going to trade, but I do like putting these stocks on my watch. There was a period last year where we were seeing a lot of these stocks that have price action near identical to this. And they get these really weird, grindy trends higher on very low volume. And then they just dump. Like this thing is going to dump 85%. Like I almost guarantee you it. Like the reason I'm not going to trade it is because one, I pretty much don't like I rarely trade to the short side, and this is just kind of a risky stock in general. We've seen microcap, although I'm not convinced this is a microcap stock. I could look into it, but it's not trading like a microcap. But we've seen stocks that have this price action, and every once in a while, they will have some insane monster like 500% day. And that does occasionally happen, and I just would not ever want to risk that happening overnight. But I'd say there's a very, 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 very high chance that any day now, this thing will crack down and drop 90%. Um, Kind of like what we saw on this day here. When that'll happen, not sure, but this is pretty, uh, um, what's the word? This is interesting price action, and anybody who's seen these stocks before knows exactly what I'm talking about. I can pull up one of them actually. I believe it was this stock. Here we go. Here you go. You got a fly right here. You get these just weird grindy trends higher on very low volume, and then they just snap down. And I think the same thing will happen with an SMJF. Is it SMJF? Yeah, the same thing will happen with this stock. I mean, it's happened before. It happened on this day here, and I think it's bound to happen again. Um, let's see. Aerospace names continue to unwind, right? We had this false breakout. If you see consolidations like this right over their highs, it's a big red flag, right? This would have been a great breakdown trade if you were watching it right below the 18th lows. Like this is pretty picture perfect for breakdowns, because when you have a base and then you build higher lows and you don't really, you try to break out, but you consolidate like right at this level and you never get going. This is just people selling into this liquidity here, and then boom, you just drop. The only exception is SpaceX is holding up. Well, I take it back. I mean, I thought it when I looked at it earlier today, it looked a bit better. SpaceX is holding up okay. Still not really a stock I'm watching, but Lockheed Martin, which I was in on this day. Actually, I bought it on the 7th. Is now completely, is all the way down here, which really surprised me. I was pretty confident that this thing was going to go back to highs, but that's why we have stop losses. So aerospace names definitely getting hammered a bit. Metals, steel. Oh, here's another stock on my watch list. Of course, MT. I'm looking to re-enter on this thing. I bought this on the 30th, got stopped out on the 20th, and then now it's kind of flagging. And if we can get over today's highs, pretty much, I think it looks pretty solid. The one concern is the other steel names do not look particularly good, and we continue to see this weird price action in the steel names. You just sell off all day, you gap up, and then boom, it's just like people are just using this to sell. And that's not generally a great indicator, but there's reasons that these American steel companies are performing a lot worse than a stock like MT, because MT is not going to be affected by the tariffs like NUE or STLD is. And right, these are why these dropped initially on the 18th was tariff news or like some announcement by Trump. So I do think MT has potential because it's a European steel stock. Lithium names have been popping up a little bit too. If you look at LIT, I think SQM is particularly strong. I had actually traded SQM back in this period here, and I trimmed a little bit into this strength, and then it stopped me out. But SQM looks pretty solid. And then, if we can kind of build out a right side on this, I would definitely potentially look to get involved if the other lithium names are holding up decently well. Copper continues to perform well. I could not find a place to get involved in copper, and I think a lot of people probably feel similarly. No clean places to buy off the moving averages here. Most of these bases were really, really choppy. Even if you zoom out, they look really clean. To actually time an entry on these is pretty challenging. If you wanted to buy it here with a ginormous stop loss, like go ahead. But just for me, not really a super easy group to get involved in. Beyond that, though, things are looking not bad in my opinion. Again, I think it's just all about being in the right sector. Oh, I'll talk about the XLE real quick. XLE, a bit of digestion today. Expected, right? Exactly the same reason why I didn't trade a DK on the 21st, because I just didn't like where the XLE was, and then we got a washout, and that's exactly what we got. Frankly, you could have even looked to buy a DK here, kind of in this pullback, but Not really my style. But XLE looks pretty good. There was one oil stock that looks decent from a technical perspective, but I do think it's a laggard, and that would be a PBR. Still has a nice base, still hasn't quite broke out yet. But for me, I just don't really visualize myself trading oil anytime soon. I would have liked to be involved in a DK had we not broken out on this day and we consolidated a little more. Just let the XLE kind of digest a bit, but we didn't get that. So it is what it is. My positions have not changed like pretty much at all. Still in Eli Lilly again. Hope we get a gap up tomorrow and we'll be off to the races. ETHU, still nothing for me to do with this trade at this point, right? My secondary profit target, right? I've already trimmed a little bit into the 200 on Ethereum. And then my secondary target will be this level here, kind of 2,700. That's where I'll trim again. And then other than that, I want to be able to hold as much of my Ethereum position as possible, which is what you want to do in low, kind of what do you call it, like the Stan Weinstein 4B setup. When you can catch lows, potentially catch lows of stocks like this or crypto, whatever it is, you want to trail with the moving average that keeps you in the trade as long as possible. So that's what I'm going to do. We'll see what happens with Ethereum, Bitcoin. Again, nothing for me to do as far as managing it, and again, nothing for me to do as far as managing Brinker International either. I mean, I've been fully trimmed on this since earnings. So yeah, we'll see. I would like to see if you get real lucky. It would be awesome to see a stock like this hit 300. But we'll see. But again, I'll go through my watch list one last time. It would be a Frog. It would be a Chime. Both of these preferably off pullbacks into moving averages. SoFi, again, off pullbacks into moving averages. Oscar, same idea, pullbacks into moving averages. DT looks decent, although I'm not convinced I'll trade this necessarily, but it is something I'm watching. Toast, just something I'm watching, not really trading it, obviously. GH, would like to see one more pullback into the 20 here. And then, of course, just something I'm watching just for fun is this SMJF, because this is a very, very suspect stock. But yeah, that's all I got. And thank you for watching.